First, I want to say thank you. Thank you to Canadians across the country for caring, for speaking up for those without a voice, and for standing up for improved animal protections. My colleagues have been inundated with correspondence in support of C-246. I want to in particular thank Ruby's Love Letter Legacy, an organization come together to stop puppy mills, and animal cruelty legislation advocates, both grassroots organizations working to improve our animal protection laws. You know, when I introduced this bill, I said Canadians from all parties support ending animal cruelty. I don't think this is a partisan issue. I don't think it should be a partisan issue. I would stand alongside farmers, like my in-laws. They would disown me, by the way, if I did anything to farmers. I stand alongside farmers, fishermen, anglers against animal cruelty, and certainly, as any number of our colleagues here today have said, this is about ending animal abuse, not ending animal use. When I introduced the bill, I said, this bill is to bring our laws into the 21st century. I overstated the case. This is a basket of modest measures, all things considered, to improve our animal protection laws. There's been a ton of confusion about the bill. Am I giving animals rights? The rights not to be tortured and abused, if we want to call those rights. So what does the bill do? The bill does three things. We've touched on some of them. So shark finning. Some folks in this House have said shark finning is already illegal. We don't have to worry about shark finning. The Globe and Mail reported that last year 300,000 pounds, over 300,000 pounds of shark fins were imported into the country. When they're tested commonly, they're found to be from endangered species. Other countries have bans on the importation of shark fins. 10 states in the U.S. have bans on the trade of shark fins. When we look at Australia, there's actually an international norm, a landed shark requirement. So the terrible practice is when they cut off the shark's fin and waste the body at sea. So what do countries do? They require that the shark be landed intact and then can be finned. If an amendment's required, I'm perfectly open to that idea, but we should in this House stand against the practice of shark finning, and not just within our borders. We don't have many sharks in the Canadian borders, against importing shark fins, I should say, into Canada. Fur labeling and banning the sale and importation of cat and dog fur. I don't know who could stand against who could stand in favor, I should say, of importing and selling cat and dog fur. There have been numerous petitions in this House against the practice. It's been banned in the EU and the US for years. Why Canada would lag in this area is beyond me. When we talk about fur labeling, again, the EU and the US require fur labeling. Big companies in Canada already do this. You buy a Canada Goose jacket, you see it comes from Coyote. Why all companies should not be subject to this practice as a matter of consumer choice is beyond me. Animal cruelty in the criminal code. You know, I've been accused of drafting this legislation and the wrong-headed way I drafted this legislation. This legislation was drafted in 1999 by the Justice Department. So the opinions that my opinion matters as to its effect, ignore my opinion. Take the opinion of the Justice Department that drafted it. Take the opinion of Honourable Anne McClellan. Take the opinion of Honourable Martin Cochon. Take the opinion of the Honourable Irwin Cotler, all of whom propose identical legislation. Or, if you don't trust them, take the opinion of the Cattlemen's Association of the Dairy Farmers of Canada, who in 2004, among many other animal use organizations, wrote a letter to the Honourable Irwin Cotler to say, please pass this legislation. What legislation? The identical legislation that is before you with respect to these criminal code amendments. Now, I recognize we're over a decade later. People don't have the institutional memory. People are worried about this legislation. I listened, I consulted. I met with more agricultural sector groups in my tiny little office. I'm not the department, I'm not the ministry of anything. And yet we consulted broadly over the spring and over the summer. We heard concerns. And, you know, some people said they're political concerns, they're not policy concerns. I didn't particularly care. I'm pragmatic enough to know I want something to pass. I want to improve our animal protection laws. So I proposed amendments. I proposed amendments to limit the criminal code to 3 specific things. Amending bestiality to address the Supreme Court case. Expanding the definition of animal fighting. No one's going to complain about criminalizing profiting off of animal fighting, breeding, training animals for the purpose of fighting. And I limited the criminal code amendments, the third piece, to gross negligence. Why? Because every standard across the criminal code with respect to negligence is a gross negligence offense, a marked departure from the norm. Why would animal cruelty be any different? But right now it is the only standard in the criminal code that is willful neglect. That's it, these 3 changes. And as far as process goes, Our job in this House is to support legislation if the object of the bill is something we can support at second reading. And guess what? If the changes aren't made at committee, and I'll be the first one to propose changes when I address the committee, but if these changes aren't made, the bill comes back to us at third reading and we can vote it down. And if these changes aren't made, I encourage all of you to vote it down. But if you don't vote in favor of it at second reading, I encourage you to tell your constituents you don't care about the object of the bill, which is ending animal cruelty. Thanks very much, Mr. Speaker.